Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cichlid Shack, thecichlidShack.com. Today's video is a long-awaited video series that I've been promising for quite a while, labeled "So Do You Think You Want a Fish Room?" This will be part one of my series, and we're going to call this the planning stage. Planning is probably the most important part of starting a fish room. We're going to start off with a number one on my list here, and don't mind me, I'm going to keep looking up and down at notes here. Dedicated space. It's very important to have a dedicated space for your fish room. Flat, level, sturdy surface, because obviously it's going to hold a lot of weight. Approximately 8 pounds per gallon, so obviously you want a nice flat sturdy surface. Few things to consider when you're planning for your fish room. Is the room well insulated? Take my fish room for example, my garage. Garages, when they build houses, are not the most well insulated places on the planet. They kind of skimp in garages, if you ask my opinion. So what I did is had insulation blown into the ceiling above the garage. I insulated both the exterior walls with the 4x8 sheets of insulated styrofoam, and I did both the garage door and the exterior wall. And the other two walls are interior walls that are interior to my house, so they are already insulated, so I did not have to worry about insulating those. Second thing we should look for: does your room have a water supply or drainage? You have to think that this is fish tanks. You're going to have to do water changes, take water out, put new water back in. So do you have a good place to drain water and to supply new water? I have, in my fish room, I have put in, what do you call those, slop sink, mop sink, something, I'm not sure exactly what they're called, but I have one in my fish room, and it is connected directly to my hot water heater, so I have both cold and hot water. You have to consider where you live. A hose might work if it's 80 degrees year round, 80 to 90 degrees year round, but if you think during the winter time, hose water is going to freeze your fish to death. So you do need access to both warm and cold water. So, and then drainage is also something that you need to consider. Do you have somewhere where you can do your water changes, where you can drain your tanks? You don't want to have to drain it straight out into a driveway or that way. If it's cold outside, you don't want to have to open your doors and let cold air in and such. So think about water availability and drainage. Third thing you want to think about is, how will you keep the room warm and cool? How will you heat and cool your room? Will you use heaters in every tank and not heat the room? Will you put in a centralized heating and air conditioning system, which is the route I chose to go? I heat and cool the room and keep it between 80 and 82 degrees year round. It kills me during the summertime because it does get 110 degrees here on average, but in the long run it is less expensive to heat and cool the room, and is more effective to control temperature in the room than to heat and cool each individual tank. And we'll get into that on a later video when it comes to budgeting. Number 4, you have to consider humidity. These tanks are full of water. You're heating and cooling the room. Most of these, if it's going to be like mine, are going to be open topped, depending on how many tanks you have. I mean, I have over 100 fish tanks. To buy lids for each one would cost a small fortune. So most of my tanks do not have lids on them, so humidity is a factor. Now, my central heating and air conditioning unit does have a dehumidifier on it, so I can dehumidify the room with the central unit. So that's something else to consider. You might want to look into dehumidifier. They sell them all over the place, and we'll get into that more in the budgeting stage also. The fifth thing you need to consider is lighting. How will you light the fish room? This is one of the things in my planning stage that I overlooked. Now I think it's very important. In almost every one of my videos, somebody tells me you need to get some lights on those tanks so we can see the fish, and I completely agree. But again, in the budgeting stage, we will go over what everything costs, and you will see that owning a fish room is quite expensive. Okay, the second part of the planning stage is, what is your goal behind this fish room? Is it to supply your own tanks? Do you want to breed some fish so that you have your own and you no longer have to continue to purchase these expensive fish? Is it just for fun? Are you gonna sell the few that you get to support your hobby, to pay for your tanks, for your fish, that kind of thing? Or will it be a business? You need to consider these things and how you set up your fish room, how many tanks you're going to need, the way it's going to work, and what is the end goal of your fish room. Third important thing in planning is the layout. After deciding what the purpose of your fish room is, you will need to decide how you want to lay it out. In my case, I wanted to get a lot of tanks in there, but I didn't want it to be to where people couldn't see the fish if they didn't want to. A lot of breeders turn their tanks sideways so that they can fit more fish in there. I didn't want to go that route. Number one, because I knew that I would need double the tanks and it's just too expensive and I probably couldn't do it for years. Number two, I wanted to be able to enjoy a lot of these fish. I wanted people to be able to see them. When I shot the videos, I wanted to be able to show off and showcase the fish also. So I chose to lay mine out with the show side facing. On all of my breeder tanks, my grow out tanks, all of my tanks are all facing show side out. Now that's something you need to consider when you're laying out your fish room, as to where you want to set it up full breeding setup to where the tanks are sideways so you can fit more in. But you must consider that when you do that, you're going to need to spend more money to get multiple, probably close to twice as many tanks as you would as the way I have it set up. Fourth thing that you need to consider is filtration. How will you filter your fish tanks? There's multiple different ways. You could set up a sump system. Very, very economical, very good way. A little bit expensive to start, but a very great way to filter multiple tanks. You can put so much biological filtration in sumps. You can heat from one specific spot throughout the entire system. Great way to filter your fish room, but in my opinion, it depends on how many tanks you're going to do. Could I run 135 plus tanks on a sump system? Yeah, probably, but it would have need to have been a pretty decent sized sump. My choice was to go the air route. I chose a linear piston pump. All of my tanks, well, the majority of them, there is a few that are run on hang on the back filters, and I also do on a lot of my breeder tanks. I've left some hang on the back filters for extra filtration because they are heavily stocked. But the majority of my tanks are run on a linear piston pump or sponge filters. One linear piston pump is running the entire fish room, so it is very economical. Sponge filters are a great source of filtration. They hold your beneficial bacteria and are very easy to keep clean and maintain. Use your fish tank water when you're doing a water change and squeeze out the sponge filters. Put them right back into the tank and you're good to go. So simple, so easy. Third way is a way that I wouldn't recommend because it's going to cost a fortune, is hang on the back filters. Depending on the number of tanks that you have, you can run all hang on the back filters. If you only have 10-15 tanks, it's an easy way to go. They're easily accessible. Keep in mind that you are going to have to keep changing filter pads, and added cost and maintenance goes into that route. But it is, I mean, the Marineland BioWheels are an excellent filter. I have them on this tank behind me. I have two Marineland 400s, along with some power jets and some other filtration. Excellent source of filtration. So that is another route that you can take as far as filtration. Number 5, the tanks. Need to figure out in the layout stage, obviously you're going to figure out what size tanks that you want, and then how many tanks you're going to need. So in the layout process, you'll already know how many that you're going to need, what's going to go where, and what size tanks you need. So it's very important to decide the size of the tanks. My breeding colonies, the peacocks are in 29-gallon breeders. The haps are in 40-gallon breeders, and some of them in 50 gallons. Like my tangerine tigers and my deep water haps are in, I think they're actually 46-gallon bow fronts. Would I like to have them in larger tanks? Sure. And in the future, probably they will, because my tangerine tiger is about 10 inches. After you decide the size and how many you need, there's multiple places where you can get these tanks. I have gotten some off of Craigslist. It's a great place to get tanks. Keep in mind that these tanks are used, that you may need to reseal them. They might leak at first, they might be dirty, so that's something to consider. You're going to have to put some time and effort into those. We have something here on Facebook called Buy Sell Trade sites. I picked up many tanks off of those sites. Petco dollar per gallon is my favorite place to get tanks. They hate people like us because we just come in and buy the tanks, and the whole point of that sale is that they want you to buy the filters, the heaters, the stands, the lids. They want to make a fortune off of you. So they hate when guys like me come in and we buy 15, 20 just tanks. But it is a great way to get lots of tanks at a really good price, brand new. Another great place to get it is your local fish club. If you do not belong to your local fish club, find it. Look it up on the internet. Ask around, find it. I've gotten fish tanks. I've gotten breeding colonies. I've found resources to get fish at wholesale. I mean, there's an endless supply and knowledge and so many things that you can benefit from your local fish club, and it's very important that you belong to one. You can also sell fish there. It's just there's endless reasons why you should belong to your local fish club. And it's just a great place to reach out and meet new people and basically hang out with people who are just as insane as you are. That's the way I look at it. I'm an insane fish guy. I love fish. It shows. I have 100+ fish tanks. So that's going to complete the first planning stage of this series. Again, do not take this lightly. Planning is very, very important. It's a very important stage in setting up a fish room. You will regret it if you do not. I planned my fish room down to a T. You need to decide. A second thing is, are you going to do this in phases? Are you going to do it all at once? I chose to do it in phases because of the cost, and we'll get more into that in phase 2 or part 2 of this series, which will be labeled budgeting. Another huge factor in setting up a fish room. I think that many people are under the misconception that this does not cost a fortune, and it does. It costs a small fortune to start a fish room, whether it be small or large, especially if it's a large fish room to the scale of like the size mine or John at KG Tropicals is. The both of us have a large fortune invested into our fish room. So we'll get into budgeting on the next video. Again, I hope you guys enjoyed this series and we get something out of it. If you have any questions, please leave in the comment section. As always, rate, comment, subscribe, and thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.